Louder! And what's up, everybody, and welcome back to hyPODermic, the pod that sticks you deep. I'm TJ Bowser. Nick cannot be with us today due to insane technical difficulties, but we're going to plow ahead, and we have a very special guest. I actually had him on the TJ Bowser Power Hour a couple of years back, but he only did one book at that time. Returning guest to the Project Louder Network, Mr. Jason Douglas. Here he is on the screen now. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Better now that you are here.
Excellent, excellent. Technical difficulties, right? Only when you don't need them.
Absolutely, man. But we are here. We are ready to do the content and talk about all the things, and we will just jump right into it. So, for you listeners out there who don't know the things, Jason does comic books. He's also a teacher during the daytime, but he is known for his comic books, and he did the Parallel comic book, which I'll let you talk about now.
Yeah, so that literally my very first script ever, my very first book ever, call it The Midlife Crisis Finally Got Me Off My Butt and to pursue a lifelong dream that I had since I was 12 years old to write a comic, and then I just did it. And then the best part of the story is it gets produced, it gets picked up by SourcePoint Press, it gets dropped right into the beginning of the pandemic and flops hard. But long term, the amazing news, the I can't believe this is happening to me news, was that in the same kind of blissful ignorance, irrational confidence that I had when I sat down to write the script in the first place, right? How hard could it be to write a comic book? Very hard.
Very hard.
I also didn't know that when your book flops, you usually have one of two options, which is either, hey, nice try, fulfill the dream, moving on, or if like writing is your gig, you move on to the next project. Had no idea that is what you're supposed to do. So instead, I went on, over the next 18 months when people were locked down and there were no cons and no signings, I went on 75 shows, podcasts and IG Lives and Facebook shows. Again, not knowing that's a ridiculous number and it's not what you're supposed to do. But, whatever that unintentional hustle is the wrong word, but that hustle pays off. Word starts to spread. The book picks up steam, eventually sells out with that and return to cons and doing a couple of shows, and then garners 2 Ringo Award nominations. And it's like this completely different, atypical story from how I wrote it to how it got picked up by a publisher, very not 21st century style, and then how it actually got to people and became the book that it became. I was at Baltimore for the award ceremony, and I got to do my very first panel, right, at a show. And I'm sitting there with editor-in-chief of SourcePoint Press at the time, Travis, and he's telling me this story about how how as the book was picking up steam because of all the shows I was doing, SourcePoint had to go to stores and buy back a ton of copies to meet the online demand, which is, again, not something that happens, and completely blew me away. Kind of like
no, it doesn't.
like getting the news at the same time as the people who came to see the panel was, and speechless. Not something I'm used to being. Speechless is, like you said, I'm a public school teacher. I literally stand in front of 180 teenagers every day trying to convince them that grammar isn't boring, which means you've got to have some kind of gift of gab, some kind of gift of BS, right? Because it's not true. And so I was like struck dumb by that, because it's like, what, I knew it was atypical in some ways, but like, man, the story from its inception to like where we are right now, which is, look, the Kickstarter is dominating my life because it's the new thing and I'm terrified.
Yes. And we'll get there.
But here, my next book lives or dies on a Kickstarter, right?
It's crowdfunding.
It's a really personal story. So like that's dominating the thing because it's new, but like my other thing that's going on right now is I'm promoting and going out and like I'm doing signings and I'm doing a few shows to do the Parallel Special Edition.
Mm-hmm.
And like the whole trip from that first day I sat down and typed the first words of the script to like having this expanded special edition that hit a bunch of like the nerd like kind of pokey spots again for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I got to curate back matter, right? Like this whole trip has been a blast because variant covers out of nowhere that sold out. Like,
mm-hmm.
oh my God, your nerd nerve. It's like, oh, that's brilliant. Back issue, or not back issues, but like secondary market. I mean, obviously no financial benefit to me, but like, books show up on eBay of like sold out variant runs, and they're going for like $150.
Yeah.
What is happening? And all these different things along the line. Yeah. And then I got to like this whole full circle to bring the book back and get it to even maybe hopefully a broader audience has just been, again, mind blowing and just this amazing journey.
So how does the special edition of Parallel, which is kind of like your second one, is that like an expansion on the original story?
So 50 bonus pages, right?
Oh, okay. That's quite the expansion.
Yeah. And like, I mean, it runs the gamut. So like I said, like I got to curate all the back matter. And like, thank you, Ed Brubaker, for inspiring me and Scott Snyder, because some of my favorite back matter, whether it be like the very personal stories that Scott Snyder would tell at the back of Witches, or the way Ed Brubaker just like, he's just so good at it, right? And I wanted, God, I'm assuming at some point a couple of years ago we talked about like I really appreciate as a comic fan bang for your buck,
mm-hmm.
rereadability stuff that like, look, you and I have both bought things, I'm sure, where the back matter is literally there to push a page count and be able to charge a higher price. And that annoys me as a fan, and I have zero desire to do that to anybody else who would be willing to spend some bucks on it. So like I made sure that everything in there was something that I would want to see in the back. And there's an afterword in there that's very personal, and it kind of much more eloquently than I just rambled through some of the journey over the couple of years. It tells it in a much cleaner way. Bringing it up to date of where it was. I mean, the only thing that it really leaves out of the afterword is like the insanity of the last year putting together the special edition, having to rearrange where the Kickstarter for Jane American would go because of health concerns on my end. But like that story's there. You've got your obligatory but very cool cover gallery. You've got your annotated script pages. You've got your annotated concept art. You've got a brand new bonus story diving back into the world of Parallel that I was describing it as a between the panels story, which it is. I was thinking Marvel's editor notes back in the 80s, but what it really is, and what their inspiration really is like the back of the first 40-some issues of Classic X-Men. It's actually snapshots of in between, in X-Men, it was in between this issue and this issue, this actually went down, and it kind of enriches the story.
The somewhere elsewhere type thing.
Yeah, and it's like it's like when you move from, you're familiar with Parallel, you've read it a couple of times. When you move from this scene to this scene, you're getting glimpses at what went down in between there, and it really fleshes out a couple of the characters in a way that I really appreciated. So I was really excited about that too. And then, you know what? As much as I even love the bonus story, I think my favorite part of the special edition is actually like some of the annotated script pages, which would be the thing that I would think universally, unless you're a total process nerd, it would be the thing that I think most people in back matter would skip. Don't skip mine, because it is not just page 47, right? Yeah. It's because I'm who I am, I can't resist. We had to edit it back what I wrote because it'd be like a script page and then a page of text. And it's cool, but it's too much. So what it ends up being is it's not just it's like where that story got written. So like my favorite little bit in there, I'm going to give this away right here. Is like there's a couple of scenes that I put in there, a couple of pages that illustrate X, Y, and Z, right? Good pages to have if you want to see if you're into the process stuff. But then I tell like the story about this one scene. It's a scene I really, really like, but the story of like how I wrote it, when I wrote it, and it's more just like personal narrative of, I'm at this street fair in southeastern Michigan, like in Royal Oak, and I'm there with my wife and our friend, and the two of them like go into this shop, and there's like street fair, right? Hipster street fair, dudes with playing bago, and I like right in the street, and I like I get hit with the lightning bolt for this scene. Like I crack the like, I know what I want. I sit down on the curb pull out paper, crumple them in my back pocket, a pencil. I'm like scribbling away as the beanbags are like whipping past my head, not noticing at all. And like these dudes are like stepping over me. I'm like, no, gotta get it out, gotta get it down. And like that's the kind of, that's the kind of annotation I'm talking about in special edition.
That's the good stuff, man. You always kind of like want to know where these point of origins of these ideas come from. And speaking of origins, let's hear about your origins and some of what books inspired you to write things like this.
Well, so I think for as atypical as my journey as a creator has been, whether it's from the age that I started to how Parallel came to be to all the things along the way, right? The unlikelihood of everything that's happened to me so far, my comics kind of origin is pretty standard, if not a little bit later than most, right? Okay. Like I didn't have older siblings. I didn't have cool parents. I didn't have the dude down the street who tells you this is the band, this is the movie, these are the stories. And so I came to things a little bit later than I think a lot of people, right? Like I didn't hit comic books until I was 12. And but once I was in, you and I were talking off air earlier about the number of DVDs or Blu-rays we may or may not own, and like so like what I call it, and this is probably irresponsible of me to call this, but like high functioning OCD. Like if I'm in. I want it all, right? Yeah. Like a greatest hits album is like get out of here. Go jump in a lake.
Right? I want the full album.
Yeah. Either I don't like you or I want every single thing you've ever produced. And so I got into comics pretty hard and at like 12. And I had that run like through like my middle teenage years. And then I did that thing where you step away. I took my 9-year hiatus, right? And, when I was a kid, it's like early 90s and and I love X-Men.
What books were you picking up then? Yeah.
Well, I love X-Men. I love Wolverine. I'm a sucker for die cut and foil covers because that was the era. But at the same time, oh God, my movie taste was like this at the same time as well. I'm like half collector and half just immersed in good story and something good to read. So like at the same time as I'm buying Spawn #1 because Image Art and Image and what
it's Todd.
My pull list is every single Valiant title because of the tight interwoven universe, right? And the much more realistic Barry Windsor Smith storytelling and art, like on something like Archer and Armstrong, right? At the same time, I'm reading X-Men. I'm also very, I'm going to say age inappropriately, but not like content-wise, but like what 12-year-old also loves Sandman Mystery Theater. Yeah. Like, I'm reading a noir comic book with Guy Davis art, and there's not a muscle to be seen on 22 pages each issue. Like, what is happening? At the same time, I'm living and breathing Star Wars. I'm like, what my second favorite movie is? All the President's Men. It's like it's the weirdest 12-year-old, right? Or whatever. So I'm reading everything. I'm collecting everything. And then I go on this hiatus, and the only 2 books I took with me into hiatus, the only 2 things that followed me were Sandman, Neil Gaiman's Sandman, and then Art Spiegelman's Mouse. And I'm reading Mouse at Michigan State. I'm having it stolen out of my room because it's so good. I buy it like 5 times. And then it's actually Neil Gaiman who brings me back into comic shops, like in the mid-2000s, because he comes back to comics after a 7-year hiatus or whatever it was, and to write Marvel 1602, with, ironically, his legal battle with the Todd father, right? And then I'm hooked again. And it's the exact same dichotomy to this day, just with a slightly higher budget. And it's like collecting and doing your runs and getting your keys and your shiny covers. But at the same time, you know, if Jeff Lemire writes something, I'm buying it, right? If Ed Brubaker writes something, I'm buying it to read it. I want the hardcover, right? I want the fanciest edition because I want the back matter too.
All the variants.
So, yeah. Actually, that's who I am as like a comic collector / reader. It's like a half and half. It's a 50-50 split for sure.
Awesome. So let's transfer things over to Jane American and that one. So what inspired you to do Jane American?
So there's these, oh my God, forgive me for saying it, but there's these parallels between Jane and in the fact that I think the type of storyteller that I am, I think that this is safe to say now, is somebody who really likes to balance a comic book wrapping paper with some much more universal, deeper themes that it encompasses, right? So if you go back to Parallel, it's a dark sci-fi twisted tale. It's a sci-fi comic, right? It's with dark kind of horror undertones to it, at least psychological horror tones. But at its root, it's about a very, very universal theme of the existential dread of time passing and dreams deferred. It's something that we all go through. Landon's just happens to manifest in a parallel version of himself, reaching out, offering him that chance that he thought left behind forever, right? So structurally, Jane's the same thing, right? Okay. As drastically different as they are in story and tone or whatever, structurally it's the same thing. It is a story about a young person that can do things that other people can't, right? Comic book trope, right?
Yes.
Without me saying those words, because I don't want. You know what? There's an ending to this one shot that's going to have you going, give me more. So I'm not going to say those words, but you know what I'm saying, and that's the wrapping paper. That's the comic book nerd in me. But what this book is really about at its core, this is about identity. It's about gender. It's about self-worth. It's about small-town societal norms. It just happens to be a period piece set during World War II and in post-war America. So it's like that thing, and the inspiration, ironically enough, is actually similar to Parallel, at least in one way. You know, Parallel came about. There's a raw idea that was sitting there that my buddy and I discussed. There's my own midlife crisis of what am I doing, right? Why do I just keep on putting off something that I want to do and then finally doing it? And then there's this inspiration that I'm sure we talked about last time, where I had a former student who was like pushing 30, like Landon is in the book, and like kind of woke up one day and said, where did the last 8 years go? Is the door shut on my dream? And it like just clicked for me. I was like, well, I'm going to write this story, right? This is for me. This is for you. This is for everybody who's gone through that. And the same thing happened here. Okay. I've been teaching for 23 years. And that means it's literally, I'm a 21st century teacher, right? Like I'm an old dude. I come from the analog era, right? Give me a chalkboard before a smartboard. But I'm a teacher in the 21st century. Yeah. It's all my kids are 21st century kids, okay? And it's been bothering me for a long time that you've got these young people who have come through my room and even in the 21st century are still struggling with fulfilling who they actually are. That identity crisis because their parents say something else, their peers say something else, their teachers say something else, society says something else, and it's very hard to figure out who you are as a kid, much less embrace that if other people are telling you that's not who you should be. And then you extrapolate that back to 1946 and 1942 when the story takes place, and it's exponentially a bigger problem. And then where this story gets really, really personal for me is this story is actually inspired by and named after my late grandmother, who fought against, and not entirely successfully, a lot being put in that same box of societal expectations, just in hers during and post World War II America. Okay, so like this story becomes very personal because there's like family names throughout the book, and it's meticulously researched. It takes place in the town that I grew up in a very like it is World War II and post World War II Plymouth, Michigan, like halfway between Detroit and Ann Arbor. Okay, right where I grew up. The factory that Jane spends a lot of the time of this book in is actually a real factory that during World War II used to be a wire factory, and they got a war contract to make Marsden mats, which even if you don't know the name, like if you're not like the deepest World War II history nerd of all time, you don't know the name, but you know what they are. They're the big, long, corrugated metal punched hole sheets of metal that they turn into the temporary runways in the Pacific to do island hopping, right? So down the road in both directions, all the industrial plants go from cars in Detroit to bombers. And right here in Little Plymouth, they turn a wire factory into the how to get those bombers off the ground. Mm-hmm. And my great-grandfather worked in that factory during World War II. My grandfather and I, my grandmother's husband, high school sweethearts, the week before they actually tore apart the actual wall wire, we got a tour. Oh, ripped it all down. So like my artist, like Annie Wright is working from photos and videos of like stripped down to the brickwork and the conveyor belts that held the Marsden mats and the train depot on the back. And like it's just, dude, I'm so excited just about the research part of this because I'm a history nerd at heart too. Like, the story is ridiculously personal to me. My grandfather, who made it to 99 years and a month, right, lived a good life, fought in World War II, president of Qantas International, like literally I can't tell you during the last year of his life how much pleasure it gave him to see his name and his high school sweetheart's name on the page and start to see the art. There's a character named after him. There's a character who's got his likeness, and like it tickled him no end, and it gave him so much kind of something to cling on to and to keep going even when things got tough towards the end. And like, as much as Parallel was a project about fulfilling a dream for myself, that the 12-year-old in me, the comic fan, man, this thing's for my grandma. This thing's for my grandpa. It's really for all these kids who have struggled throughout my classroom in the 21st century. Literally a couple thousand of them now, and how tough that can be for anybody who doesn't feel comfortable really embracing who they are. Because that's Jane's story.
Excellent. So you are crowdfunding this book.
I'm finally doing it right, the way you're supposed to do books in the 21st century. Yeah. Not the I don't know if you remember me telling the story. Not the walking into a convention with half a script in a Manila folder with paper clips saying, "Would you like to make a comic book for me?" Which like. When I approached, the people at SourcePoint, I mean, they looked at me like I was insane, but they were also like, "Are you trying to pitch me a comic from 1970? Because this is not how things are done, but let's do it anyway." Yeah. I'm finally doing it the way you're supposed to do
it. So that will go live on Kickstarter on May 2nd, and we'll have links to that attached to this episode, of course. And how long is that Kickstarter going to run for?
So it's going to go for exactly 30 days,
okay.
Which is, is kind of like that magic window, right? You never really want to go over it because then people think that, I've got time, and then it doesn't get funded. But I want to give people May, I want to give people May to take a look at it. I'm super excited. Look, like if you know anything about me, either as a teacher or as a comic book creator, like, I'm doing my research, that I'm working really hard to prepare to make sure it's the best thing possible. Like I want people to be happy with whatever level of support they're going to give. So like, I'm so fired up. I mean, right now, if this goes out to people before May 2nd, like the best thing you can do is obviously you go to Kickstarter.com or if you got the link to the sign up page, right? And you sign up to be notified when it goes live. That's one of the things that I've researched again in my trying to figure out how this is. The more people you have following it, the better off your chances are of getting it funded. But I'll tell you, when that thing goes live on May 2nd, I really can't wait for people to see it because, oh boy. So, I may or may not have commissioned a couple of rather impressive cover artists to do exclusives for us for this.
Oh boy!
and I'll reveal it right here. I'm going to be showing those covers on Instagram on my on at J Douglas Writes over the next couple of weeks leading up to May 2nd. But Malia Elwert is doing one of the covers, and she is fresh off of her gig as animator for DreamWorks and is now working with Garrett Gunn making comic books at SourcePoint. She's done a bunch of the best Good Boy covers, and her cover is, oh God, it's gorgeous. Okay, it's gorgeous, and it's going to be the one. We've got like a very limited textless variant that's going to go with that one. That's like very limited, and that's one of those things where it's a tiny little window. So you got to get on it early. And then because, this is nice, I'll tie it together to origin story, because I'm such a 90s comic book nerd, it will be getting the chromium variant treatment. We're talking Turok #1, right? Shadow Man #0, that beautiful. Some people are like, get out of here with that. I'm like,
variants for days, man.
Give me all of those. And then if that wasn't enough, Cena Grace did me a huge favor, and he made a cover for me. And we're talking about the dude who wrote Iceman, who, little depressed boy, ran Skybound and edited The Walking Dead for Kirkman for years before he started doing his own books, and has now got a big old Superman book coming out this fall for DC. And he created this cover that on its own looks like it's coming out of the 1940s. It's got a little Tintin vibe to it.
Yeah.
And then my letterer and designer, Dave Lentz, vintaged it up. So it's got those faux creases on it.
It looks incredible, man.
It looks old. And then this is my most exciting for my variant nerds. Like, you're gonna go nuts. So I'm putting it through this printing process. It's called a soft touch laminate. Okay, kind of feels a little bit like suede, but literally yeah, I know, it's crazy. I wouldn't have believed it had I not gone to the printing plant where I'm getting my books printed and like touched one and said, what is that? And she's like, that's a soft touch laminate, and I'm like, okay, tell me more. So what happens is, if you put it through soft touch laminate, and then visually you design it as like a vintage old comic book. Mm-hmm. This book is literally going to look and feel like it's coming out of the 1940s.
Oh, that's so cool.
And Garrett Gunn of SourcePoint has named it, and I adopted this. He's named it the Granddad's Attic variant. Because it's been in your granddad's attic for the last like 60, 70 years, and it's going to be in your hands if you jump on.
Now, will these all be available at launch of the Kickstarter, or
everything? There's nothing hiding. Some of them are limited in number, so you want to go early. Okay. And the only thing that's going to be limited in time is going to be the Virgin textless variant of Malia's cover, because it's gorgeous, and it produces a little excitement. It looks so good on its own. It's got a Rosie the Riveter feel that you would not believe, because that's like it's a big theme in the book too. The economic. I mean, look. So it's this. The book is this 32-page, one-shot, full-color comic, right? It's kind of introducing us to Jane's world and exploring those themes of identity, gender, and self-worth that we talked about. And it's got hints of like Superman for All Seasons, Archie 1941. And I think the way, like, if I'm going to give you my one-liner, like the pitch, it's like, listen, you're going to read these 32 pages. It doesn't matter what age you are. My belief is that it's going to break your heart. Ooh. It's going to make you cheer. And it's going to shock you with a cliffhanger ending that's going to have you begging for more. Because if this sucker gets funded, the long-term plan is the 120-page OGN that follows. Yeah. And that's the whole story. I mean, you can read this; it's self-contained, but you're gonna want more. Like, my elevator pitch for this is the way I'm thinking about it is like, you look at Jane, who has this life that's filled with more than enough responsibility for a young person coming of age in small wartime American town. Okay, you get family tragedy. Dad goes off to war. And that changes her, the trauma of that changes her in these unbelievable ways that are better left hidden, okay? Yet, and this is where the Rosie part comes in, yet the economic hardships presented by the end of the war, right? Mom gets sent home from the factory. Dad's not coming home. it's left Jane with this choice. It's left her with a choice. She can stay safe, as she's been told. She can stay hidden, which is clearly the best decision for her own well-being, or she can embrace who she really is for the sake of everybody that she loves. And that's the story at its core.
Awesome. So we talked a little bit prior to this episode, and before we take things in a negative route, let's talk about the creative process, because since we talked last, did an episode last, I have also made a book, which you have read. And we had discussions about writing too much, and sometimes just writing to write, for writing's sake, and how important that is as a writer, as a creator. Talk about your feelings on writing just to write. The man who writes too much.
It's maybe one of the healthiest things you can do for yourself.
Okay.
It's like, I mean, there is a reason why mental health experts, one of the first, before they're going to prescribe you a single piece of any kind of medicine, they're going to tell you to go journal, right? They're going to tell you to just pour it out on the page, because it's freaking therapy. And when you're being specifically creative with your writing, that can do the exact same thing as well. It might hurt a little bit differently, right? Because it's like, it's that, when you have that story in mind, as opposed to just freely pouring out your feelings or your day on the page, you hit those different kind of cramps and those different kind of painful things that you can't figure out. You might manifest as writer's block. It might manifest some other way. But it's really, really good for you, I think. And look, life gets in the way sometimes. But like, if you've got something that you can come back to, if you know you're not just like abandoning it, I think it's a great way to kind of keep your balance, if that's something you think you can do. And I don't see a downside to it.
Yeah, I 100% agree, man. That's some good advice, and definitely I can see how it's therapeutic on some level too.
Well, it's also the thing that like the best piece of writing advice I ever got in my life was actually from Neil Gaiman directly. And years before I started any of this, like, I was at this very bizarre open sourcing Linux convention. I was there because he was there, and his son was working for Linux at the time, right? And it was like local, and it was like this great opportunity. And I was teaching fourth grade at the time, and one of his daughters was about a fourth grader at the time, and my kids were my students had been writing him letters because we were listening to Coraline by candlelight to make it creepier, and they loved it, and blah 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 blah. And I got like 45 minutes of his time where we were just hanging out and talking. And the piece of advice that he gave, that I know he said publicly in other places often, is just like, the way you create a comic, the way you create anything, is you just do it.
Yeah.
And when he pauses there, it sounds trite, it sounds thin, but the reality is, and how he backs it up, and this is the advice that I give to anybody who asks me now, is like make your thing, because when you do, it exists.
Yeah. And
what I can't promise you is what happens next. I can't promise you that it's good. I can't promise you that anybody will care. I can't promise you that that it goes anywhere.
Yeah.
But I absolutely can promise you that if you don't make it, absolutely nothing will happen.
Yep.
And because we're humans, and I truly believe it's human nature to embrace the fact that it's always easier to do nothing than to do something.
Oh yeah.
I'm living proof of sitting on a dream for decades and decades and decades. And had I not, found that inspiration to finally get off my butt and do this thing and take that big leap, like, none of this would have happened. None of this would have existed. And, Robert Frost, Road Not Taken, regrets will drive you mad, but like, man, I feel like I would have regretted that.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat, man, with Paranoia. I wrote it, and I was like, you know what?
I'm so excited that you did that. That's so cool. And it like, doesn't it feel good? It's like, look, does it matter what happens next? Of course it does. But on one level, it doesn't, because like you're doing this thing, and it exists now. It exists, and that doesn't go back in the bottle.
No.
Right?
Yeah, right.
You can't go backwards on that. You created a thing that now exists in the world. And that's a bit of magic, I think.
It's a little bit of part of me as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's going to exist forever. And it's something that matters. It's about leaving something behind.
Yeah.
And transitioning that into the more sadder side. You mentioned it earlier, briefly, the C word, and it's not comic books.
No.
So you are a cancer survivor.
Yeah.
You kicked its ass, Roddy Piper style.
Yeah.
And there might be, you were on your steps again. Yeah. And you had some shady news, man. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So like the big arc of the story is, apparently I am making up for lost time in the last 2 years. I had 4 decades of ridiculously good health where, I don't know, this might be a little hyperbole, but I'm pretty sure I took Tylenol maybe 12 times, a couple of headaches here and there. And then the last 2 years, I've just been literally falling apart. It's like a cliche, like you hit 40 and suddenly you fall apart, and it's like a joke, and it's actually happening to me, which is insane. I tore the meniscus in my left knee by kneeling down and helping a kid with an essay in class. Like
what?
Nothing superheroic. Yeah, nothing superheroic. I bent down to like talk about a topic sentence, and like there was this noise, and a bunch of kids, like their eyes went like this, and
it's pretty loud when that happens, isn't it?
The LC, the learning consultant who was in the room was like that didn't sound good. Like it didn't feel good. So like I get knee surgery, right? We had a lot of tragedy in our family. My wife lost both of her parents, and I lost my dad in a span of 9 months. And like I'm watching them, it's gonna get dark. I'm watching them trying to revive my dad, and I shattered one of my back molars, and then ignored it, and it got gross, and they had to yank that out. Just about a month ago, I had a doctor tell me that from my X-rays I have, this is a medical professional saying this, I have shockingly severe arthritis in my left foot for someone my age. Like it's literally falling apart. So all this stuff is swirling around and going on, and my family and I we had the 5 of us, we like had this summer we were trying to find some center, some semblance of normal, right? We went on a couple of trips and a lot of kids sports and a lot of sunshine, and came back from that with the plan of Jane American Kickstarter, probably in September, and then Parallel Special Edition would be early 2023. And we ended up flipping that because I went in August, right before school started, for a routine colonoscopy. I'm not showing any symptoms or anything like that. It's literally, I'm a rule follower, and the age changed from 50 to 45 on when you're supposed to go get your first one. I go in there, come out, I'm doing my normal, I'm like making a joke with the doctor, still under the hazy, medication, and like the look on his face, I'm not picking up on the signals. My wife was, and she's like, something's wrong. I'm like, what are you talking about? Feeling still pretty good from the anesthetic, and they found this giant tumor in my colon trying to kill me. And I was under the knife a couple weeks later, August 30th, and they cut it out, and the margins were clean. And I entered a clinical trial to see if there's DNA cancer floating around my bloodstream, and I've been clear on that. And I'm in the kind of standard of care, and things are feeling pretty good. And I'm trying to win recovery. I'm like back at school in like 2 weeks. It's supposed to be a month and a half, that kind of thing. And things are still fine, but I got, test results about a week ago that there's a new growth on the outside of my colon, and it could be scar tissue. It could be cancer. It could be something else. I got to get this, a CAT scan in a couple of weeks. No, a PET scan. There you go. A PET scan in a couple of weeks where they shoot a dye into you that's like glucose heavy. Because cancer loves sugar. It'll just like if that 2 centimeter growth on the outside of my colon, what's left of my colon where they reattached me, lights up and sucks it up, then it's cancer, and then, you do more tests, and then it's probably another surgery. And if it doesn't, then it's something else, and you lay out a couple more tests. But it's like, if I'm going to be completely honest with you and anybody who's tuning in, it like, you hear the tone of my voice, right? It's almost matter of fact. It's almost, I'm smiling because, man, I'm tired, right? Like, it's just, it's been this life now of however many months of what my wife and I call hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh my God, tension that you can cut with a knife, pins and needles till this test comes in. Test comes back, the best news it can be, which is a momentary relief, but the reality is, great, this test is clean. Now wait 2 weeks where the next test could show even worse news than this test could have shown. And it's kind of been, 6-7 months of that. And it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And yet, tomorrow keeps coming, right?
Yes.
And 8th graders need me to try to convince them that grammar isn't boring. They need me to lie, right? 3 children who live in my house need a ride to sport A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Right? The youngest needs me to read her something before bed. Jane American needs to get funded. It's like reality keeps on going, and I've got plenty to live for. So like, I don't think, besides, I'm going to be completely honest, besides the first 48 hours, I don't think there's even been a moment where I was like, I don't think it happened.
Yeah.
The first, you've got something in you trying to kill you. Here it is. That first blur of like 36, 48 hours was probably the roughest. Since then, like, if I'm not going to die tomorrow, I better get my stuff. I've got stuff to do today, and I've got plans for tomorrow, so I'm going to just keep going. And I'll tell you what, though, it has, like, between the fact that Jane American as a project is dedicated to all these other people.
Yes.
Inspired by and dedicated to, like, family members who are now no longer with us. And then that new sense of my own mortality.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm more motivated than ever, right? Like it makes the prospect of like how Kickstarter works, being my first one of the all or nothing, it makes it even more terrifying.
Yeah. Right.
Because like in the same way that I mentioned to you before about like going out there and doing like the 75 interviews, like I am probably even to the detriment of my own health, like working to the bone to do everything that I can, even though it's still an unknown for me, to make sure this thing happens.
Yeah.
And it's not the motivation that I think, is a bit more typical, where I just don't want to fail, or anything about ego, about, my project deserves whatever. Like, my fear of failure comes from the fact that I truly feel that there's other people than me relying on me to pull this off.
That's understandable.
And so like the pressure's pretty high,
mm-hmm.
but I love to say that I'm like super confident, but like it's an unknown. I don't know how, I don't know how it's going to go. I can hope that it's going to go a certain way. I can work my butt off to do everything I can in every waking moment to make sure it goes a certain way. But like in the end, it's up to people. It's kind of how indie comics live and breathe, right?
Mm-hmm. It's
up to fans and fellow creators to all support the community, because we're not the big two. We don't have major corporations behind us. We don't have 80 some years of infrastructure and editorial mandate and IP that like will float a boat. If X-Men gets ignored for 30 days,
mm-hmm.
X-Men will be back in 30 days. If people turn the other way for 30 days in May, my book doesn't exist in the world. You know what I mean? So it's like it's a different level of pressure, and it really comes down to everybody supporting everybody else and giving it a shot so that those independent stories continue to exist in the world.
May 2nd.
Yeah, May 2nd.
Yep.
Yeah.
That'll be on Kickstarter, folks. So let's get away from the sad stuff and talk about current affairs. What books are you reading right now? What comic books are you reading?
So I am reading, let's see, last night I stayed up way too late doing a live show and then only got a couple pages in. But I'm reading Matt Kint's Mind Management Bootleg right now, which is really good. And I just love he's another one of those modern writers that I can't get enough of. Love his art too. But oh my God. So I'm reading some Mind Management right now. I am reading a stack of floppies that are just random stuff that I just, hey, let's give it a read. There's a bunch of Marvel 2-in-1s I'm reading right now, kind of like as I'm pretending to go medium fast on the Peloton. Like literally, how lazy, how non-workout would it be? Like can you just picture me like on the Peloton, like literally reading a Marvel 2-in-1 from 1982. It's delightful, charming, and pathetic all at once. So I'm very much waiting for. I don't know if I ever told you this about my reading habits. So if there's a series with any kind of continuity to it at all, and I'm waiting for the trade, if I love it enough, what I'll do is I go back and start at the beginning.
Yeah.
So like when Jeff Lemire's when Descender was coming out, right? And I wasn't buying floppies, I was buying it by trade. And I read volume 1, 7 times. Or however many is there, six times. Because I go back and reread the first one again and again. And the thing that I'm actually anticipating right now, I want. Have you been reading Brubaker's Reckless books?
I have not.
Oh my God, the dude just him and Phillips are for me. When I came back to comics, it was like a Loeb and Sale thing. I was like, "Oh, they're the best team."
It is in my Amazon cart though. I just checked. I was like Reckless and Friend of the Devil in there. I was like, "Yes, those are in there."
No, dude. I think they're the dynamic duo. I think that they might be the best team in comics. They are just so freaking good. And the pandemic hit, and they basically, when things were in flux, really, really bad there for a minute. How are things going to be distributed, and how is this going to work? And there's still a lot of questions right now in the industry, but they just reinvented a way to make it work for them by just doing this quarterly book, this kind of quarterly OGN. It's still the running thing, but it's not monthly like Criminal was, or miniseries monthly like Criminal was. It's just a big fat amazing story once every quarter or about there, and it's to die for. I love it. And I go back and reread volume 1, 2, 3, 4. They all stand on their own, but I highly recommend that too.
Awesome. Yes, that's actually somebody else. I think Adam Marcus recommended Brubaker to me as well. I hear a lot about that. That's a great.
Yeah, book. Nobody writes crime. Nobody writes noir like him. Yeah. It's not even close.
Fucking A. So, where can they find you on Instagram?
Easy peasy. At J Douglas Writes, just the letter J, right? Because I didn't want you to have to type too many letters. ASON was a bridge too far. So at J Douglas Writes, you cannot miss me on there. Check it out. My little picture these days. I'm literally. It's like the day after surgery. I'm in my hospital gown. I'm flexing like superhero.
Yes.
With an IV in my hand. You can't miss it. So yeah, go follow me there. The next handful of days leading up to May 2nd is going to be totally, little cover reveals, big cover reveals, so you can kind of see some of those things that are going to come up there, and then off and running on May 2nd.
When's your next convention appearance?
So I was just at Muncie doing an Indiana comic convention. Let's see, last week. I will be at State of Comics in Plymouth, Michigan, where the book takes place.
Wow!
For Free Comic Book Day on May 6th. I'll be at Traverse City at the end of May. I think I'm being popped on there as a guest any day now. I'm doing a couple of small shows here and there, and then kind of playing it by ear because I still need to give my kids a summer. And yeah, so nothing major, but a convention here, an appearance there, and getting Parallel Special Edition out in the world. Sign it. I'm telling you, dude.
Where can they buy Parallel Special?
Well, okay, so look at this cover. It might be my favorite Parallel cover yet.
It's
like
awesome.
I mean, the Donnie Darko variant is obviously very wicked cool if you've seen that before, and the Baltimore exclusive one was awesome. But I just love this cover.
It's incredible.
You need, not only do you need a copy of this, but you need to get it signed by me, because silver, gold, and bronze have been popping on this cover.
I bet.
So good. So right now, Source Point Press, you can get them from them.
Okay.
You get on Amazon. Basically, anything that Simon & Schuster distributes to, you can get it through. So you can go straight to Simon & Schuster. You can get it from Indie. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from Barnes & Noble.
You can overpay on eBay.
You can overpay on eBay. Don't do that. And so you can get it that way. You can get it from me at any of the appearances that I'm doing, and I've got a list of those on IG. And then probably when I'm wrapping up that tour, that mini tour this spring, early summer, depending on how many I've got left in like my little cache downstairs, I'll probably go on IG and send them out to people, and so you can get a signed copy if you don't want to do it the other way.
Awesome. Excellent. So stay tuned for the release of The Adventures of Jane American. Go buy Parallel Special Edition. Go check out Jason on Instagram. Man, good luck with the crowdfunding. I will definitely be pushing for you and sharing the hell out of that link, man, because I believe in this project. Parallel was an awesome book, and I don't doubt that this one will be just as awesome, or if not cooler. Thank you for coming on this episode. Thank you for talking to me again. It was a true pleasure, man.
You're one of the good ones, buddy. I really, really appreciate your time. I'd talk to you all day, as you can probably tell.
Yes. Same here, man. But thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of hyPODermic. We will be back very soon with a bunch of musical guests, and I can't wait to share that with you. But until next time, this is the Pod Boss, TJ Bowser. Bye-bye!